Good afternoon to everyone. It's, as I've said before, it's wonderful to see everyone here gathering on the day of rest, which I'm really happy about. And I don't feel alone in that one because of what's going on, and we can rest from all those stressful thoughts and watching things unfold before us in our society. Brethren, we, the people of this nation, the United States, whenever possible, we should always be thankful to our Creator God in heaven for what He has done for us. It's a situation where, from what I see and encounter, only on a very small scale, but watching the news also, the people seem to be, in a general sense now, not everyone, but in a general sense out in society, they don't seem to be very appreciative or thankful for what we have as a nation, what has been given to us. The very life we have on this earth, brethren, is certainly proof enough to be thankful to our Father in heaven. Just living, breathing, and having the things we have, and the blessings we've been given and shown, and the freedoms that we have to go with that. All things, brethren, are given to us by our Father in heaven. After all, it's taken me a long time to really think deeply about life and what we have on this earth. As I got older, I thought, wow, living, breathing human beings made in the image and likeness of our Creator. There's nothing like it. He is the designer, the architect of every human being, and of course the animal and flowers and plants and trees and the earth itself, to be thankful. The patriarchs, brethren, and the prophets of the Old Testament, early Testament, in their travels and how they were directed, told to say certain things and go certain places, they were constantly giving thanks to our Creator in heaven. If you ever read that in the Scriptures, you'll just follow it. You'll see it there. You have to see it. It's right there in the Bible. They were always giving thanks to our Creator in heaven. For even back then, and believe me, living back then was not easy. They didn't have the easy things we have today and the conveniences. That I know. They walked a lot on foot. They traveled in makeshift wagons, I guess, horses. And when the Roman Empire came about, they built roads, which was good. And then at least you didn't have to trek through the swamps and all the dirt and everything. But back then, they were given things that were helpful too. So the patriarchs certainly were thankful for everything. They were always expressing their gratitude to our Father in heaven. Now, my title today, brethren, is Being Thankful. Being thankful. Let's look at 1 Chronicles in the early Testament. Let's see what these men did and said. 1 Chronicles 23, 28 to 31. Let's start there. 28 to 31. The duty of the Levites was to help Aaron's descendants in the service of the temple of the eternal God, to be in charge of the courtyards, the side rooms, the purification of all sacred things, and the performance of other duties at the house of Yahweh. They were in charge of bread set out on the table, the flour for the grain offerings, the unleavened wafers, the baking and the mixing, and all measurements of quantity and size. They had to get it right, and they did. They were also to stand every morning to thank and praise the eternal God. They were to do the same in the evening, and whenever burnt offerings were presented to the eternal God on the Sabbaths and at new moon festivals and at appointed feasts. They were to serve before the eternal God regularly in the proper number and in the ways prescribed for them. The key word here, brethren, is to give thanks in the morning and in the evening, at night. Let's look at King David. King David, he gave thanks to our Father in heaven many times in prayer. Let's look at 1 Chronicles 29. Let's go over to there. 1 Chronicles 29. I'll read you verses 10 to 13. 1 Chronicles 29. David praised the eternal God in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, Praise be to you, O Yahweh, mighty one, God of our fathers, God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, O mighty one, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, O mighty one, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. Now, our Creator, Father in heaven, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. King David, brethren, think about that. He was the apple of our Creator God's eyes. It says that right in the Scriptures. And there he was, giving praise and thanks and honor to our Father in heaven, because he knew where he stood. He certainly did. Now, let's go to Daniel during his captivity. Now, imagine this. You're in captivity under, King Nebuchadnezzar of the Babylonian Empire, and they weren't easy to get along with. I mean, they were pretty cruel to the Jewish people when they came down in captivity. But here's Daniel. During his captivity in Babylon, he was given the meaning of the vision given to King Nebuchadnezzar, and he explained it to him, what it was. Very privileged man. I would say Daniel was really, really privileged by our Father in heaven to be given that information. Let's look at the Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, real quickly here. I'm going to read you verses 19 to 23. Daniel. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the eternal God of heaven and said, Praise be to you, to your name, O mighty one of Israel, Yahweh, forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He sets up kings and deposes them. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, O mighty one of Israel, my God, and the God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king. And he gave thanks, as I just read. He said, personally himself, just in verse 23, I thank and praise you. So there you have it. Under those circumstances, brethren, he was very thankful and very happy to get this information to the king. And that was something else. I mean, to be in that position, to be given the interpretation of that awful vision that the king had, and which basically described the beginning and the end of the Gentile kingdoms in this world. Now, let's fast forward here to the New Testament days. This is when Yahshua, our Messiah, and the apostles, the disciples, gave thanks. And all the people did too, that they come in contact with, that they baptized and so on. They gave thanks. Well, let's look here in John chapter 11. Let's go forward down to the New Testament, the book of John. I'm going to look here at John chapter 11. Let's see here. In this particular chapter, this is when he brought Lazarus back from the dead. I'm going to read to you from John 11, verse 41 42. Here we go. So they took away the stone. Then Joshua looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. He gave thanks. Joshua, our Messiah, brethren, was the architect of human life, of this earth, and everything that's alive. There he was, and he gave thanks to our Father in heaven that he heard him and brought Lazarus, of course, back from the dead. Another person in the New Testament is Paul. I'm sure we've read a lot about Paul and his missionary journeys, but he gave thanks on many occasions. He taught his people and the churches he established to give thanks to our Father in heaven on a lot of occasions for the blessings given them. Let's look at Romans chapter 1. Let's look at Romans for what Paul said here, verses 7 8. Romans 1. To all in Rome who are loved by our Creator God and called to be saints, grace and peace to you from God our Father and from the Lord Yeshua the Messiah. First, I thank my Creator Father in heaven through Yeshua the Messiah for all of you, because your faith is being reported all over the world. There you have it. He thanks our Creator in heaven personally, and he states it right here, through our Messiah, for all of these people that he was establishing as, and they were his saints, that he established that church. Okay. Now, when he wrote to the Philippians, he did the same thing. Let's look at Philippians 4. Book of Philippians here. We'll go to chapter 4. Okay. So that's Philippians 4. And we'll look at verse 4 to 7. Rejoice in the eternal Yahweh. Always, I will say again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The eternal Yahweh is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, and by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to our Father in heaven. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Yeshua the Messiah. Wow. The way Paul writes things, brethren, and the way he says it, to me, it drives the point home. And I've noticed throughout all of Scriptures, many verses are said, stated, and are right to the point. I'm sure you've all noticed that. So it gives us maybe a little bit of work in our minds to figure out what was said, but it goes right to the point, and we got to really ponder it and think about it. When he says give thanks, that's exactly what he means. Thank our Father in heaven for what we have. Okay, let's look at Philippians 1. Let's go over here just to chapter 1. I'm going to read verse 3 to 5. Paul states here, I thank my Creator Father in heaven every time I remember you in all my prayers for all of you. I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Yeshua the Messiah. That is the second coming. So he gives thanks for that too. Paul wrote to the Thessalonians. Let's look at 2 Thessalonians. All these churches, during his missionary journeys, brethren, he always taught them to give thanks. So let's look at 2 Thessalonians, chapter 1. I'll read verse 3 to 4. We ought always to thank our Father in heaven for you, brothers, and rightly so, because your faith is growing more and more, and the love every one of you has for each other is increasing. Therefore, among God's churches, we boast about your perseverance and faith in all the persecutions and trials you are enduring. Now, as we see, brethren, here, in reading the scriptures and knowing about Thanksgiving and when and why we should be giving it all the times, in all of this, brethren, Paul the Apostle, in understanding what he's doing here, he instructed all those brethren of all those churches, Colossus, Thessalonica, and all the others that he visited. In all his admonition, he always told these people to be thankful to our Creator God. And what he says certainly applies to us. Here we go, Colossians 3. Let's turn over to there, Colossians 3. I'm going to read to you verses 12 to 17, Colossians. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the eternal God forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Yahshua the Messiah rule in your hearts, since as members of one body, you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let the words of Yahshua the Messiah dwell in you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, and as you sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with gratitude in your heart towards our Father in heaven. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of Yahshua the Messiah, giving thanks to our Father in heaven through him. Brethren, this is an admonition that when I read it, wow, we have to constantly, as God's people, stick to it. Because as you well know, in your life, your individual lives, and where you live, you're going to have some fiery darts thrown at you from time to time. It could be from the neighbor, where you work, go to school, wherever it might be. You're going to come upon some people that are going to say things and so on and so forth. You know the rules on that. But to be forgiving and to be thankful, because our Father in heaven, he'll take care of us and protect us. And he'll especially protect our children here, wherever they may be. You'd be surprised. It's just a wonderful thing. But the message here, brethren, is to always be thankful to our Father in heaven for what he has done for us. Okay.